Don't be afraid of anything anybody says to you about the dangers of a carnivore diet. Knowledge is power, but commitment and confidence that you're doing the right thing ensures your success. Well, good morning, everybody. It's me, Mitch, and you all know what this means. We're going to cook some breakfast. I call it breakfast because even though it's not early in the morning, you ever have one of those fluorescent lights that just didn't want to work? Come on. There it is. Always something. I call it breakfast, but it's not really what most people consider breakfast. It's my first meal of the day. And that brings up what I want to talk about today. You've all seen me cook, but I enjoy this format, and it accomplishes two things. I get to cook my meal, and I get to talk about the subject of the day. Now, this one is not real simple, and I normally like to talk off the cuff, but this one I actually made a bunch of notes. And I'm going to refer to them throughout the video because I've come up with a lot of points I think are pretty important, and I really don't want to miss any of these points. So, you pardon me if I just take a glance at my notes once in a while. Most of the people that watch this channel have come to this because, like myself, they have experienced a lifetime of dealing with the issue of either bad health, diets to lose weight, and nothing's worked so far. Because it's kind of obvious that if it had worked, you all wouldn't be here. The reason I'm here is because I spent a lifetime trying to find something that works, and when I say a lifetime, I mean a lifetime. And it wasn't until this carnivore thing came along, which by all intents and purposes sounds wacko. It just sounds crazy. Just ask anybody. Walk up to a stranger and say, hey, I found this diet that's really helped me lose weight. And they'll say, what is it? And you'll say, I don't eat anything except basically non-plant foods, animal foods. Don't like to get those eggshells, although they're healthy and nobody likes to hear their omelet go crunch when they chew it. Anyway, they'll say to you, you want to do what? And you'll say, well, just going to eat meat, basically. Well, and they'll say, well, surely you'll be able to eat fruits healthy. And they always put the words heart healthy in front of the terms fruit and vegetables. And you'll be able to eat those heart healthy whole grains because everybody knows that those things are good for you. Just ask any doctor or read what the American Heart Association or the American Diabetes Association says. Surely you're going to eat some of that stuff. And you say, no, I'm just going to eat eggs and bacon and steaks and hamburgers and maybe some fish, maybe a little chicken, maybe some pork, but that's it. I'm not going to eat anything else. And they'll say, well, what about your snacks? And you'll say, I don't eat snacks either. And they'll say, well, that's impossible. Nobody could keep that up for very long. That doesn't sound like it might be a very sustainable way to live. And you say, well, you would think that, but in reality, I've been doing this for me, for my own sake, I've been doing this now for almost 15 months of not having eaten, not the first piece of plant food, not the first fruit, not the first grain, which is plant food. And when you stop to think about it, pretty much everything that we're giving up comes from plants. Because nothing that comes from animals, oh, look at that. That is a ribeye for later. That's going to be my second meal. So what I'm saying is that what I'm eating today, my entire food for the day, with no exceptions, is going to be 4 1/4-inch thick strips of bacon, 5 eggs, and excuse me while I beat my eggs. Okay. And a pound plus ribeye, which I'll probably eat in about 4 hours from now. Because part of what I do is time-restricted eating. I hate to use the word fasting because fasting kind of has the connotation that you're somehow starving yourself and suffering and unhappy and feeling deprived, everything else that we normally feel on any one of these hundreds of other what they call fad diets that we've done over our life, and they were unsustainable. And they were unsustainable because you were miserable when you were on them. And people can endure misery. People can endure hunger. People can endure all kinds of things for short periods of time. But nobody is going to be able to endure anything like that long term as a lifestyle. Lifestyle, by definition, has to be enjoyable. Who would want to live their life in a manner that's not enjoyable? When people use the term lifestyle, you know, the first thing you think of is vacations and fun, and you don't think of misery and suffering when you use the term lifestyle. And if you really want to find out how wacko this lifestyle of ours sounds, just talk about it with anybody that's unfamiliar with what we do. But interestingly enough, when I finally, after 55 years of trying almost every diet, I mean, I never tried the really wacko diets like the grapefruit diet or the potato diet or any of these one fix wonder diets that take this pill and tomorrow you'll be skinny kind of things, because you do have to be able to separate the sales pitches from the reality. In our society, the advertisements from what is really good advice. We've learned that you have to discount any advice you get about diet from the medical community, which on the surface sounds like a statement only a wacko would make. So after 55 plus years and of finally honing in step by step, starting low carb, eventually going to Mediterranean, then eventually going to the zone diet, and eventually going to the keto diet, and all those other diets. The keto kind of came as close for me as possible. And the reason that I failed on all those other diets, and that 99% of people within a year of, if they ever reach their goal weight, but within a year of reaching their goal weight, they've gained it all back again. The recidivism in weight loss is worse than the recidivism of criminals who've been in jail. They stand a better chance of getting out of jail and not committing a crime than a dieter does following any of this conventional diet advice of not gaining their weight back. And that's evident even in shows like The Biggest Loser on TV. Most people will gain it back. And here's the epiphany. Here's the epiphany that I had. And you all know what an epiphany is. It's one of those aha moments where something you've been searching for a long time finally crystallizes in your mind, and you say, that's what the problem had been. For me, and I think for most of us, that problem is carb addiction. And the only answer for most of us, whether we want to believe it or not, is to give up all the carbs. Just like any other addict, and I've said this so many times, you can't be a drug addict or an alcoholic or nicotine addict. You cannot have an addiction and touch even the smallest amount of that stuff, because those things do have a chemical effect on our biology and will lead inevitably to binging. And we're out of control when we binge. So that led me to finally saying, I'm going to try this absurd, impossible to sustain sounding thing that everybody's raving about. Ah, God, this is the best part of my day right there. Just that. Looking at that bacon that's starting to brown and listening to that sound. And make the decision. I'm going to try this carnivore. I'm going to try this carnivore thing for 30 days, and I can always go back to the thing, but I can do anything for 30 days, and most people can. So I started it, and after 30 days, changes started to happen. Almost miraculous things, not only in my health, not only in my physical appearance, started losing weight without even thinking about it, but in my mental well-being, in my mental attitude, and in the fact that my addictions weren't hounding me anymore. So I continued. And I've been continuing now for almost 15 months without deviating. Not one leaf of lettuce, not one carbohydrate. And when I tell people about that, they look at me like I'm from another planet. That's impossible, they say. You can't do that. Nobody can do that. Nobody can do that and not get bored. Well, I got to tell you something. Do you see this? See this? I look forward to this right here, and I do it almost every day. I look forward to this more than I ever looked forward to any of the high carb foods, which I was addicted to the point where life almost had no meaning unless I could just gorge myself on that stuff. And I explained in a recent video that my theory is that brings back all of the ancient survival programming that's built into all of us, and we're helpless to fight those kind of urges. Our logical thinking just gets turned off. And it actually worked for me. So everything that these people were saying about carnivore that are actually doing it actually turned out to be true. And that gets reinforced every day. What we have, and which coincidentally just happens to be the way all of our ancestors, going back millions of years, ate and lived without all the crap that we manufacture today, the availability of all that crap in every store on every shelf. I still marvel when I go into a drugstore, for God's sakes. A drugstore, which is supposed to be there, a pharmacy, which is supposed to be there to make sure that you can buy the products that you need to maintain optimum health. And what's the drugstore filled up with? Primarily rows and rows and rows and rows of expensive vitamins and supplements that you don't need, because every one of those is in this right here. Rows and rows and rows and rows and rows of bags of potato chips and Doritos and junk food and candy bars. Freezers full of Coke and Pepsi and sugary soft drinks. Ice cream, not just one brand of ice cream, every kind of ice cream. And then you find an aisle in a drugstore that may have a few Band-Aids. But if you look at the food that they sell in these quote drugstores, or pharmacies or health food stores, they're mislabeled. They're not, nothing in that store is really going to help as much as this right here, as this bacon and egg is going to help me. There's nothing I can do that's better for my health than eating this bacon, this egg, satisfying my hunger, giving me no need to want to binge. And I'm a wacko. And I can understand why I'm a wacko. And we're all strange when we finally, after a whole lifetime of failure, come to this. It works. It works. It is like it's being advertised as an ancestral, evolutionarily appropriate, nutritious way of eating that takes food in your mind out of the category of pleasure and entertainment to one of nourishment and health. And no matter what all the naysayers and the vegans and the medical community and the diabetes and the heart associations say about this way of eating, about all of the propaganda that they have made up with no evidence about all the so-called harm that all this does and how it raises your cholesterol, which it turns out was a big hoax from the beginning. Knowledge is power, but commitment and confidence that you're doing the right thing ensures your success. And I'm firmly convinced now, because I've tried everything else, that if you're a carb addict, and most people don't even know what that is or even admit it to themselves, which most of us really are, because there is a natural reason why we get addicted to this stuff, and that is it was survival food throughout our period of evolution. You have to give it up. you have to give up the carbs because the carbs trigger the addictions. I don't care if it's even a small amount of carbs. If you're not an addict and you can walk away from a box of cookies eating just one, you might stand a chance. But if, like most of us, who took to heart what they said in that Lay's potato chip commercial, which to me was them flaunting our addiction in our face when they said, "I'll bet you can't eat just one." When I heard that, I flipped them the middle finger, but it made me understand that they knew exactly what they were doing, that they knew that they were using their scientists to make everything we eat more and more addictive so that we would buy more of it, so that they would have the money to completely buy off the whole healthcare system and the medical community and medical schools by sponsoring them all, and get us to a world where Tufts University says that Lucky Charms is 5 times healthier for a human being than what I have on my plate. And it has to be the absurdity of that that makes me stick to this, beside the fact that it's the easiest, simplest, no-brainer of a way to live that there is on the planet, because all animals live this way. They eat the food that's appropriate for them. They don't have to think about it because they don't have conscious thought. They always act instinctually, and their instincts lead them to this kind of food. Don't be afraid of anything anybody says to you about the dangers of a carnivore diet. A carnivore diet is the appropriate diet for our species. If you try it and after 30 days you say, "This is not for me," I miss the vegetables, I miss the potatoes, I miss the bread, I miss the donuts, I miss the Twinkies and all that, that's your decision. We're all free to do what we want. But if you look out there in the medical community, at the rate that sickness, I'm talking about chronic diseases that are caused by that garbage food, are increasing. And when you call your doctor for an appointment and he says, it's going to take 6 months because we're that busy. And when you read stories about the fact that they're bragging about the fact that this dialysis ward just added another 7 stations to handle the increased demand for kidney dialysis, and that these nursing homes are springing up like crazy to handle the wild increase in mental illness and dementia and Alzheimer's. And you can look at all that and not see your future, then you haven't woken up yet. Anyway, this is my food, and I would never, ever anymore for the rest of my life, I can't see a reason why I would take the first bite of any of that crap that, amazingly enough, disgusts me now. And that's all up here. And that's when I finally got my conscious mind out of the way and let my instincts take over. And I love this way of eating. I never feel panic hunger. I never worry about the next meal. If it isn't even until tomorrow, I'd be okay. And that's all I can offer to anybody that watches me. Is let me tell you what I've been through and what happened to me, and the miraculous changes that have happened to me at my age in the last 15 months since I started carnivore. And with that, I'm going to eat my bacon and eggs, and you can take the rest of the day off and eat meat.